smartest thing Democrats did this year was finding their patriotism again. If you told me a year ago that if Kamala Harris would be the nominee and in her acceptance speech she would use the word privilege, I would not have guessed that she used it the way she did. America's founders, they were the Gen Z of their day. And when they were your age, they started a country. What the fuck have you done?
Bill Maher just scorched the Democratic Party, and Kamala Harris wasn't spared. On Real Time, he unleashed a brutal takedown, accusing Democrats of brainwashing young Americans into hating their own country. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't soft. It was a televised firestorm aimed straight at the heart of his own political tribe.
The smartest thing Democrats did this year was finding their patriotism again. If you told me a year ago that if Kamala Harris would be the nominee and in her acceptance speech she would use the word privilege, I would not have guessed that she used it the way she did.
And Maher wasn't joking. This was full-on demolition. The backlash inside the Democratic Party was immediate, heated, and explosive. You could practically hear the DNC scrambling behind closed doors. But the damage was done. Maher had already lit the fuse, and what followed was a tidal wave of hot takes and furious replies. Before unleashing the chaos, he did offer a polite nod to Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, saying they've tried to show patriotic love. But here's the kicker. It's not landing, especially not with Gen Z Democrats. Why is the message flopping so hard with the youth? Maher cracked it wide open. And let's just say he didn't play nice. According to him, it all starts and ends with Kamala. Her scripted soundbites wave the flag, but her silence when it counts? Deafening.
Yes, America, the only place in the world where a white guy from the suburbs could become a millionaire rapper, because here every person, regardless of race, class, or gender, has the right to be talent-free. And guess what document allows you to protest and chant, hey, hey, ho, ho, followed by something really stupid? Yeah. Constitution Day was last week. It's an actual federal holiday, but no one noticed, despite the fact that it's probably the greatest legal document ever. Is it flawed? Of course. It was written by humans, and they were all white men, as depicted in this illustration from Google AI. But how about looking at the actual ideas in it? I won't hold my breath for that, because only 14% of 8th graders are proficient in history now, and only 22% in civics, which may be why 4 in 10 Gen Zers say the authors of the Constitution are best described as villains.
That silence? Louder than anything Kamala's ever said. Then came the real heat. Maher tore into the doublespeak, the hypocrisy, and what he called a party too scared to admit they actually like America. What followed wasn't commentary. It was a televised beatdown, one that left Kamala looking like the face of a movement that's completely lost the plot. Get ready. Every fiery clip is lined up. Hit that subscribe button, and let's dive straight into the chaos. Now, you're probably asking, what do the Democrats have to do with all these chaotic examples? Maher was 10 steps ahead. He wasn't just ranting. He was building a case, loading the cannon one brutal fact at a time. And when he finally fired, it hit like a gut punch. Maher laid it all out with surgical precision. According to him, the older generation of Democrats, whether they meant to or not, has been feeding young Americans a steady, bitter diet of resentment toward their own country. Not the constructive kind. Either we're talking emotional baggage disguised as progress. That mindset, he warned, has now been passed down like a poisoned family recipe to Gen Z. This wasn't a rant. It was an expose.
It's amazing, since in 1776, James Monroe was 18. Alexander Hamilton was 21, and James Madison 25. Joe Biden was only 30. America's founders, they were the Gen Z of their day. And when they were your age, they started a country. What the fuck have you done?
Maher started connecting dots that even die-hard Democrats couldn't ignore. You could feel the tension building, and then came the knockout. He torched Gen Z. No more excuses. No more we were misled. Maher made it brutally clear. Just because the previous generation screwed up doesn't mean the next one gets to coast on victimhood. He called out the laziness, the apathy, the obsession with blaming instead of learning. In a world where the truth is literally a Google search away, Maher said what most won't. Gen Z has the tools. They're just not using them. He dragged them for choosing TikTok soundbites over historical facts, for parroting headlines without question, and for following influencers who preach rebellion but couldn't define the Constitution if their life depended on it. This wasn't a gentle wake-up call. It was an air horn, and it split the internet right down the middle. But instead of pausing to reflect, a lot of Gen Z doubled down on the outrage. They grabbed the bitterness handed to them and ran with it. No fact-checking, no nuance, just vibes and viral clips. And Maher? He wasn't done. Not even close.
So, no, the Constitution isn't perfect because it wasn't written by Taylor Swift, but... And yes, the founders made excruciating compromises, obviously slavery. But slavery was a deal breaker for the southern states. So there would have been two countries. And then to end slavery in North America, it would have involved invading a sovereign nation instead of having the moral high ground of keeping a union together. Would that have been better? History's complicated, and Gen Z reasoning is not. They think they're pure, but they're really just simplistic. They know two things. White people did some very bad things, and no, that's it. That's all they know. That's what they know.
What Maher said next didn't just rattle Gen Z. It sent shockwaves to the entire Democratic Party. When the mask came off, the truth underneath wasn't polished or convenient. It was messy, raw, and deeply uncomfortable. Maher didn't deny America's dark past, slavery, injustice, inequality, but he shattered the illusion that history is some neat moral fable. It's not. It's brutal, complicated, and full of contradictions. And pretending otherwise, he argued, is intellectual cowardice. Yes, slavery was horrific. Nobody's denying that. But Maher pointed out something most avoid. History wasn't written by perfect people. It was shaped by flawed individuals trying, often failing, to navigate the world they inherited. They weren't moral giants. Many were selfish, scared, or just plain wrong. But they were also, like us, products of their time. And that's when Maher dropped the real bomb. How can we sit on our moral high horses, he asked, when we're still fumbling through our own supposedly enlightened era? Because here we are, with AI, global satellites, Ivy League think tanks, and the entire internet at our fingertips, and we're still making catastrophic mistakes. We still fall for lies. We still miss the obvious. The issue, Maher argued, isn't in dusty history books. It's in the blind spots we refuse to see today. It's the hard questions we won't ask, the uncomfortable truths we refuse to face. And just like that, the outrage machine went quiet. Maher didn't just challenge how we see the past. He blew apart how we talk about the present. He ripped into a growing trend of demonizing America's founders, flattening them into cartoon villains, while ignoring the messy context of their time. But he didn't stop there. He aimed straight at the contradiction festering in the culture, hating the U.S. while romanticizing oppressive regimes abroad. Maher called it what it is, hypocrisy soaked in delusion, praising countries that jail dissenters and crush protests with tanks, while tearing down the very system that lets you speak freely. The irony is brutal. The truth? Unavoidable.
Well, I know that too. But I also know other things. Like how in 1776, slavery was a lot like flying private today. If you could afford to, you would have done it too. Everybody did it, of all races, throughout history, in the Bible, and all over the world. If you hate George Washington for slavery, are you prepared to hate the woman king? Because her empire was built on it too. And where do you imagine is this place, outside of your brilliant, pure minds, that's so much better than America? At least America self-corrects, a mechanism for which was actually written into the Constitution. The citizens of Gaza cannot assemble in protest of their own government, cannot do or say what they want, or practice whatever religion they want, or have a free press. All rights guaranteed in just our First Amendment.
And here's where it got spicy. Maher threw down challenge. He dared the loudest critics, especially Gen Z idealists, to spend just 1 week living under the very regimes they idolize. Not the filter hashtag-friendly versions, but the real deal: censorship, surveillance, and the constant, bone-deep fear of saying the wrong thing. Maher didn't mince words. After 7 days, they'd be begging to come back to Wi-Fi, iced coffee, and freedom of speech. Then came the gut punch, the line that shut the room down. Like it or not, he said, our ancestors built this. Imperfect? Absolutely. But they bled and broke so future generations could argue on Twitter and chase dreams that weren't even legal a century ago. That's the uncomfortable truth the loudest critics avoid, admitting they're standing on the shoulders of the very people they've been trained to despise. Fear of tyranny, not privilege, drove so many of those early journeys. The sacrifice was messy, flawed, and painful, but it was real.
The irony is in all this is that the world the founders birthed, flawed though it may be, provides the bedrock for everything that makes life good for the very people who hate them so much. It's so easy to take for granted individual liberty, a Bill of Rights, the rule of law, checks and balances, getting a trial by jury, the peaceful transfer of power, protecting minority rights, and democracy itself. But those are the things that make our pampered, privileged, bratty lives so relatively cushy.
Maher called out the trend head-on, the way some Democratic voices seem almost eager to downplay, dismiss, or outright erase the grit and grind it took to build this country. Yes, the founders were flawed. Yes, the past is messy. But Maher's warning was crystal clear. Start tearing down every pillar of the past, and don't be surprised when the roof caves in. Here's the brutal truth, he said. It's easy to judge history when you've never had to fight for your voice. It's effortless to mock sacrifice when your biggest battle is a Twitter spat. But understanding where we came from, that's what keeps a nation grounded. Maher didn't sugarcoat it. Once we lose that reverence, he said, once we start believing our rights just magically appear out of nowhere, we open the door to something darker, something that doesn't care about your hashtags or protest signs. And the scariest part? The people who do know what tyranny looks like, the ones who've lived through it, they're still risking everything just to touch American soil. Maher talked about the immigrants he's met from Africa, South America, Eastern Europe. People who sold homes, drained life savings, paid shady smugglers, all for a chance at something better. Some drive cabs, some clean bathrooms, some work back-to-back shifts with calloused hands and tired backs. But ask them, and they'd do it all over again, because even the lowest rung in America still beats the highest one back home. That, Maher argued, is what too many have forgotten.
No one starves here. Even our poor people are fat. Not everyone has to be bribed. Anyone can get rich. The cops are flawed, but we're not a police state. The drinks don't make you go blind, and no one pushes you out of a window for a bad Yelp review. Our government takes a lot and fucks up a lot, but it also gives a lot. Healthcare, retirement, money, unemployment, disability, college grants, food stamps. Maybe in the blissfully perspective-free mind, this all adds up to a low bar that America has reached. But you have to ask, why do millions of people every year risk their lives to come here?
That's the truth the loudest critics never mention. To millions stuck in broken economies and crumbling regimes, the United States isn't just a flawed democracy, it's a lifeline. While some here scream about its shortcomings, those watching from across oceans see something very different. They don't see imperfection. They see possibility. Bill Maher laid it out plainly. America may not be paradise for its loudest complainers, but for most of the world, it is paradise. It's a place where second chances exist, where dignity is earned through effort, where starting over isn't a pipe dream. It's a right. And Maher's warning hit hard. If we keep tearing down the very thing others would risk everything just to touch, we'll eventually wake up and realize we wrecked the last real symbol of hope on the planet. Not with war, not with authoritarian laws, but with our own entitlement. Here's the kicker that most people tune out. Maher reminded us of something quietly powerful. In America, failure isn't fatal. You can go broke, drop out, get fired, hit bottom, and still rise. That comeback spirit isn't just cultural, it's structural. Try doing that in a country where your first mistake brands you for life, where your last name or your father's job defines your entire future, where failure is a prison, not a plot twist. But here, you can be born into struggle and still become a boss. You can clean hotel rooms by day and own one by 50. You can flip burgers at 16 and run for Congress at 40. It's not perfect, but it's possible. And that possibility, that uniquely American magic.
Because they want what we got. The founders were flawed, but they did build a place the whole world wants to break into. No one is paying a coyote to smuggle them into India or Russia. Immigrants don't see us as the problem. They see us as the solution. And there's a reason they kill themselves to get here, and it's not just the ponds full of delicious ducks and geese.
And here's the deeper punch in Maher's message. If you keep tearing down the very system that gave you a voice, a platform, and a real shot at something better, don't act surprised when that system stops working for you. 2. And it won't just shut down for a few. It'll break down for everyone. That's the warning most folks miss until it's too late. Maher didn't sugarcoat a thing. America isn't flawless, but it's still the best deal going. It's the only place where reinvention isn't just possible, it's expected. A place where freedom isn't a slogan. It's a form of currency. And it reminded everyone, this wasn't handed to us by luck. It came through blood, sacrifice, risk. People willing to bet everything on a chance, not a guarantee. From the ancestors who dreamed of something better to immigrants who leave everything behind just to chase it. This country means something. And the second we forget that, we start chipping away at what makes it different, what makes it work. Maher's final shot was clear. If we keep trashing the only system that still lets us dream out loud, then one day we'll wake up and that dream will be gone. Not because someone took it, but because we let it rot from within. If that shook you even a little, hit that like button, subscribe for more Truth Pack breakdowns, and drop your thoughts in the comments. This conversation isn't over. It's just getting started.